In recent weeks, reports of a mysterious respiratory illness have taken the US by storm, one that sickened at least 380 patients and turned fatal for 7. As health investigators from across the country begin to look into the issue, a common thread seems to be emerging: vaping.
You've gotta be kidding me!
But medical studies are still in their preliminary stages, and there remains a severe lack of information surrounding the health effects of vaping.
That is absolutely false. There is a scientific consensus that vaping is at least 95% healthier than smoking. There's also a consensus that it's even healthier than that. There's just not a consensus as to how much. And that's just looking at the ones that contain nicotine. The ones that contain just the flavored juice would be much safer.
So what do we know so far?
More than you, apparently.
Preliminary studies have also found vapes to contain heavy metals like nickel, tin, and lead, benzene, which is a cancerous substance found in car exhaust, and ultrafine particles capable of traveling deep into the lungs' tissues.
No, they haven't. Not in any amounts that people need to worry about. This is the same technique that anti-vaxxers use. You find trace amounts of something scary, but something that's in the environment all around us, and use it to fearmonger about whatever it is you're against. It's amazing, actually, how much the anti-vapors and the anti-vaxxers have in common.
And then, of course, there's nicotine. A preliminary 2019 federal survey found that more than a quarter of US high schoolers have vaped in the past 30 days. Since nicotine is both addictive and harmful to brain development, the risk for this age group remains high.
Except most teens who vape just vape the flavored juice. But liars like you look at the total amount of vaping the teens do and imply it to be the figure for the teens vaping nicotine. If your point really were valid, why do you have to lie like this?
But now, with at least 380 confirmed cases of a mysterious respiratory illness in the US, the public is looking for answers.
I'll tell you the place to look for answers. His name's Michael Siegel, and he does the tobacco analysis blog on blogspot.com. He's actually a lefty, one of the big anti-smoking activists. He wants to ban smoking basically everywhere. But he's unusual in that he has these things called honesty and integrity. When vapes first came out, he initially jumped on the anti-vaping bandwagon, but then he looked at the science and found out that there was basically nothing to the anti-vape fear-mongering.
The first reported vaping-related death occurred in August 2019 in Illinois, and since then, 6 vaping-related deaths have been reported in California, Indiana, Kansas, Minnesota, and Oregon.
There's been a 7th since they made this video, but those deaths are associated specifically with the vaping of illegal THC-based vape products. So if there's any warning to be made here, it should be to warn people about vaping illicit marijuana products. But even then, we just have a correlation, not a causation. If someone's using illicit vapes, what other illicit products are they using? And since these are illicit vapes, what other ingredients might they be using that aren't in legal vapes, that probably wouldn't even be in legal THC vapes if marijuana were legalized? Also, you can't draw any conclusions from just 7 deaths. That's ridiculous.
I think it's prudent to advise people as both a physician and as public health specialists not to vape because we don't know what it is.
According to Siegel, who, by the way, is a professor in the Department of Community Health Services at the Boston University School of Public Health, this conclusion is, in his words, crazy and irresponsible. He also said that it's endangering the lives of our nation's youth. The main problem, though, isn't doctors like the one interviewed for this video. They're taking their cues from the actual culprit, the CDC. Siegel wrote, "The CDC has continually downplayed the role of the THC vape carts in the outbreak, and even today continues to blame it on electronic cigarettes generally. Most revealing is the fact that every time the CDC even mentions a potential role of THC, it immediately undermines it by emphasizing that the investigation has not identified any specific e-cigarette or vaping product or substance that is linked to all cases." Don't let the CDC fool you. What they're not telling you is that in epidemiological outbreak investigations, we almost never identify a single exposure that ties together all of the cases. This is why we calculate odds ratios to estimate the strength of association between the exposure and the cases. The failure to find a 100% link between a single exposure in every single case is the norm in outbreak investigations and never precludes the CDC from concluding that a highly common exposure is a likely source. Except in this investigation. In this case, it seems to be linked to illicit marijuana vapes, but the usage of these is underreported since a lot of teens are going to be reluctant to admit to a surveyor that they've used an illegal product, and many of them may not know what was in it anyway. The CDC didn't recommend that clinicians test for THC or other associated chemicals, and even with all that, 90% of the cases have been associated with THC vapes. The CDC has identified causes of outbreaks with a smaller ratio than 90% before, yet here, they're playing dumb. So why would the CDC violate their own principles of epidemiological investigation in such a way? Here's what Siegel thinks. It is clear to me that the agency has a pre-existing bias against electronic cigarettes and really wants to be able to implicate these products. The CDC might attempt to defend itself by saying they are simply trying to be extra cautious, but the truth is, if they wanted to be cautious, they would immediately issue a very clear and explicit warning to youth not to vape marijuana, period. That they have failed to do this indicates that they are playing with children's health and lives.
And this is because e-cigs remain largely unregulated in the US, both in stores and out.
Oh yeah, that's the problem. Your magic government hasn't stepped in to stop it. Here we go.
Vaping is growing in popularity with more than 40 million users worldwide.
You know, if vaping really were that dangerous, you'd think with so many people doing it, we'd see more than 7 deaths. About 1 person dies every minute from cigarette smoking. Where's the pile of dead vapors?
To remedy this situation, the FDA is currently working on a plan to remove flavored e-cigarettes from the market altogether.
Tell me this, you pseudoscientific lunk. What do you think teens who vape nicotine are going to do if you take those vapes away? Do you think they're just going to be drinking Tang and eating organic kale chips? No! They're going to turn to cigarettes, which are at least 20 times as dangerous as vaping.
I just think we need accelerated research. This is not the first time something dramatic has happened that requires a concerted response on the part of the science community, public health community, and actually manufacturers to the extent that they can be brought in to help figure this out.
This entire video is blatant fear-mongering. If you want to learn actual science, you might want to steer clear of this seeker channel. Hey, thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe and keep these videos coming by donating, becoming a subscriber and getting special benefits, or even for free with airtime. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.